What is going on, movie fans, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you all my thoughts of the brand new Alexander Payne comedy drama by the name of The Holdovers. Now, this film follows a cranky history teacher at a remote prep school who is forced to remain on campus over the holidays with a troubled student who has no place to go. Now, the question is this one of the best films of the year that might have some Oscar-worthy buzz surrounding it, and is it worth checking out? We'll be discussing that and much more in today's spoiler-free review, but first, I want to talk to y'all in the comments below. Let me know if this is a film that was circled on your calendar. But more importantly, once you've seen the film, let's talk about the things that worked, that didn't work. Your thoughts on the direction, the story, the performances. Let's have all those conversations in the comments below. So for me personally, I'm a fan of Alexander Payne, whether it was The Election, which I thought was hilarious, really a big fan of Sideways, really loved The Descendants with George Clooney, but then going to 2017's Matt Damon-led film by the name of Downsizing, not a fan of that film at all. So going into this one, and now after having seen this new movie, The Holdovers, I'm happy to report that this is easily one of his best works to date. This is the Alexander Payne that I love because he's such a character-driven director, and his story and the way he directs this film is so poignant because I'll be honest, this is a story that has very familiar tropes that you've seen a million times, a very familiar type of story of someone that's kind of down the outs, kind of cranky, giving up on people, but then he comes around people that kind of lifts him up while they're dealing with their own stuff. So it's a very familiar story, but it has that Alexander Payne type of flair and type of charisma to it, where again, he's so focused on getting to the minutia of who these characters are, what is it about their past, what is it they're going through that can collectively bring them together, and he does it in such a beautiful way. The movie works on so many levels, whether it is that real and relatable story that we have here, the poignant direction by Payne is on full display, the way that they capture the snowy type of setting, as well as it is a very funny film. Like, it is, I want to say perfect, but the way that they place the comedy in this film works so well within the narrative and the pacing of the film, and it just all comes together, and that's really due to not only some of these great performances that we're going to talk about here, but it is the direction by Alexander Payne. So again, if you're a fan of his work like I am, this to me is easily one of his best films to date. But getting to some of the other things that really worked for me, number one, these performances are electric. Starting off with fresh newcomer by the name of Dominic Sessa, he plays a character who is, again, very similar type of tropes, a young man who's in prep school, who doesn't want to be around his professor that he's not a fan of. He's in hopes to go on this holiday vacation with his mom. Things kind of fall apart, and he kind of starts off very stereotypical, but as the film goes on, you see why he's the way he is, why he wanted to spend this holiday season with his family, and he goes from being this very kind of annoying character to someone you really get to understand. And Dominic Sessa, again, first time, this is kind of his first big break, and you couldn't tell because he just fits so perfectly. He just has the perfect chemistry with Paul Giamatti as well as Define Joy Randolph, and he just plays so well within this film. Like, he's a character that I really came to appreciate in this film. But I talked about his chemistry with Paul Giamatti, who I definitely believe will get a Oscar nom for best leading performance because he is just so great in this film. He plays the old cranky professor that's kind of given up on society, given up on the generation, the younger generation that he's teaching in his prep school. But it's when you learn about, okay, how did he get in this position? Why is he so cranky? Why has he given up on people? And just seeing how he connects with Dominic Sessa's character, how he kind of has this type of humanity of feeling bad for what we have with Divine's character, and just seeing where he starts and how he ends. This film plays very much kind of like a Goodwill Hunting kind of Dead Poet Society, where again, the authoritative figures are so kind of rooted in their foundation, but then when they allow themselves to open up, that's where you get the good stuff. And Paul Giamatti plays that role so good in this film. Like I said, do not be surprised if you hear his name pop up for best actors because he's that damn good in this film. But speaking of that damn good, I have been a fan of Divine and seeing her in Dolomite was her name, and seeing her popping up in shows like Only Murders in the Building, and she was the best part of the HBO series The Idol earlier this year. She is sensational in this movie. Like, she's the heart and soul of this film. Without giving too much away, she's dealing with some personal issues of someone that she lost who was very close to her, and seeing her kind of dealing with that process and how she's able to be someone that you can rely on, but also opening herself up to allowing herself to not necessarily move on to what went on, but kind of appreciating the time that she was able to spend with this person that was very close close to her and just seeing her just being so great. I love her so much in this film. She's such a great actress. And speaking of, again, nominations, I wouldn't be surprised, and I hope, fingers crossed, that she gets that nom for like Best Supporting Actress, because she's the heart of this film, and she is just sensational. She is phenomenal. She rips your heart out. Some of these more emotional scenes, like collectively speaking, this is some of my favorite acting this year. I love this cast. I love the way that they come together, because they come from different sides of life. You have the 17-year-old who's kind of spoiled and kind of takes things for granted at points. You have this old professor who's given up on people, and then you have this person that's a cafeteria manager who's going through some things. So they don't have anything in common, but when you see how their story comes together, and they just play it so well together. But I also have to mention, the film is gorgeous to look at. I love the snowy backdrop that really kind of brings that holiday feel to the film. It also has this way to make you feel like you're watching nostalgia, because it's shot in this retro style. Like, it looks like it was shot and made in the 70s. The hair and makeup, the graininess to the film, it's all working there, but also it is just so fresh and unique in its simplistic tone. The use of humor really works for me, with the subtle dialogue and the witty dialogue between the characters. But the heart of the film, what really stood out to me, is it truly represents the idea of never judging a book by its cover. Like, you never know what someone's going through until you talk and get to meet this person and sit down and see that, yeah, you have some differences, but you also share a lot of similarities. And the idea of, again, 3 different people: this teacher who has his past, this 17-year-old prep student, this cafeteria manager, and how it all comes together. And it's just like, you can learn from one another, no matter your age difference, like no matter which generation you come from. Again, we have our differences, but we also have things that we can relate to, but you can learn from one another to make each other better. That I really enjoyed that element of this film, but it's not without its flaws. There are some things that I thought were a little bit on the negative side. Like, for example, sure, the film was maybe 10 to 15 minutes too long, which I thought was kind of a small nitpick, but I talked about it earlier. It does have very kind of similar themes and tropes that you've seen before, but also I will mention, when we are introduced to the scenario where the professor has to stay and watch over these kids, there's a group of other kids that we meet in this film that disappear for a reason. The film explains why, but I'm like, oh, I'm surprised that it kind of went this route, which I like, that they kind of focus more on these 3 characters. But I'm like, oh, I kind of like those other characters. I wish we would have got a little bit more from them, but again, that's more or less of a nitpick. Overall, before I give you my thoughts of this film, give you my score, if you stuck around to this point in the review, I want to thank you for watching today's video. If you haven't already, consider hitting the thumbs up, sharing your thoughts on this film, as well as sharing this video, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Overall, they just don't make movies like The Holdovers anymore. This movie worked for me on so many different levels, came together with having this very relatable story. We have Alexander Payne doing a great job directing this. We have this really well-placed humor in this film with some really wonderful and world-class performances. The chemistry between Paul Giamatti and newcomer Dominic Sessa was sensational, but Divine was absolutely brilliant every time she was on screen. To me, this was a delightful holiday instant classic that hits all the right notes, and I think this is a must-see for the holiday season. I'm gonna give The Holdovers a 4.5 out of 5. Like I mentioned, I definitely could see this getting maybe a nomination for Paul Giamatti for Best Lead Actor. I can see Divine getting Best Lead Supporting Actress. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Alexander Payne might get that Oscar nom for Best Direction, and this might be a dark horse, but I would love if The Holdovers does get that nomination for Best Picture of the Year, because I really think that this is an instant holiday classic. So hey, that's my thoughts on The Holdovers. Let me know yours in the comments below. What worked, what didn't work, pros, cons, and everything in between. Let me know in the comments below. Again, I thank you for watching today's video. Just a reminder to consider liking, sharing, commenting, and also consider subscribing to the channel. You all are awesome. Hope you're staying safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.
Yeah.